Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Become a Guest to Apply. All right, so I have Michael Janiak on the line, and he's Executive Creative Director and co-founder at Pattern. Michael, welcome to the show.
How's it going? Happy to be here.
Oh man, I'm doing fantastic. And to have a creative director like you on the line today and with your experience is exciting for me because I'm going to pick your brain for our audience. A lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives out there that watch this show, and they want to know what they should be doing. I want to know what I should be doing as well. And you're the guy we go to. So I'm excited about this. But just to get us kicked off, let's start this show like we start them all with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Michael, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Michael, what mission matters to you?
Yeah, thank you. For me, and I think for Pattern generally, the thing that gets us up every day is, we work really hard to help founders and disruptors and visionaries find their place at the intersection of culture, community, and commerce. So we help them build their brands, build e-commerce experiences and digital products and services to help them grow their businesses, execute their vision, and hopefully do a little good in the world.
Come on, Michael, too much style over there, hitting me with that much alliteration at the beginning of the interview, the culture communication, like, come on, culture community, have to do it like that. I would expect nothing less from you, Michael. So awesome and great to have you here. And I'm excited to learn from you. And just to get us started, really, how'd you get started on this journey to becoming like the creative person you are and really working in this agency space? Like, where did that start?
Pretty young. I was always creative and wanting to draw and things like that. When my teachers would tell me I needed to read in class, I always asked them, "Can I draw instead?" So that was always my thing. I was super lucky because my parents had encouraged that. So I was just always like that from an early age. I came up, in the 90s, and so there's a lot of interesting stuff happening within like skateboard and snowboard culture, which is my real first exposure to like graphic design. It's like skate magazines, snowboard magazines, the skateboard and snowboard decks, surf culture, a lot of punk rock and things like that. So it was a really interesting time. I think I took a lot of that, and I got really lucky because the high school that I was at happened to have a graphic design program where I got to touch Photoshop and all those programs really early on. Like, I actually am probably aging myself a little bit from that because I was like literally Photoshop version 1 or 2.
Wow.
And so I was super lucky in that I was hooked on it. I'm like, I have to do something like this. And that was kind of where the passion for just design and like visual language and being able to shape people's feeling or perception of something with art, right? That's really where that happened for me. On the entrepreneur side, both of my grandfathers on both sides of my family own their own businesses. My dad partnered with my grandfather to on a business later on. So I was an entrepreneur, and so that's just kind of we're a family of immigrants, right? So there's just like it's just kind of in my blood to do that, and I had wanted to do that for a really long time. With Pattern, I think it took me a little bit longer personally to get to a place in my life where I'd be really comfortable taking that risk. But that it definitely came, from family and seeing that it is absolutely possible to go your own way and start your own thing. So, fast forward 20 some odd years, and I'd been working in, I went to college for design, found the web right around the dot-com boom. So that was just a great time to get into it, and just fell in love with the idea that you could combine design and interaction to do things online. Worked in agencies in New York, LA, San Diego. I lived on both coasts, back and forth. And after about, at the time, I guess for Pattern, we started about 3.5 years ago. So I was about 18 years into it, and I had worked in digital marketing, I had worked in campaigns, I had worked in print design, corporate branding and identity and things like that. And then for a while, I'd been working in e-commerce, which has obviously been booming for the better part of a decade. And, my partner, Isaac, and I just were sort of at the same point in our careers where we were just really ready to figure out how to do something ourselves. So we were fortunate to have worked with each other and been in touch with each other and stayed close with each other. And we just luck, we were just ready at the time and decided to take the plunge.
That's awesome. And what's interesting to me, and you're right, some of the people that will watch this, they'll say, wait a minute, Photoshop version 1, like when is that? They're Googling right now. What's funny to me is that like there's so much opportunity right now for somebody with an artistic and creative skill set. I remember when I was growing up, and I'll date myself, I remember going in like high school counselor, stuff like this. No offense to them, but at the time the thought was if you were creative or if you had some type of thing like that, like you couldn't make money. No, like you have to go into business. Right? Yeah. So I had to think about like business or art when I was really young. And the funny thing is I had a successful business, and this is back in the day of airbrushing. I started airbrushing when I was in 6th grade, and people wore my clothes, and I was making money back then. And looking back, I'm like, wait a minute, I was a baby, 6th grade. That's crazy. But I didn't really know. And so I get into high school and they tell me, I have to go into business or if I want to make money. So I become a financial advisor of all things. And I don't get to even go back into my creative journey till like 15 years later when I started in media. So I kind of lost that piece. But the reason I'm teeing that up is because, you having gone through and made that, being a creative person and dispelling that myth, maybe that some people still have, that you can't be creative and make money. What would you tell to that new group of entrepreneurs that have that creative bent and are kind of looking for their way in the world as an entrepreneur?
I think it's actually required of entrepreneurs at this point. I mean, if we want to talk specifically about like a creative entrepreneur, the canvas that you have to apply that creativity has gone from essentially, maybe from like the 50s until the 90s, it was basically like advertising. I mean, that was it. Like you could be advertising.
A graphic designer.
A printer, right? Yeah, a graphic designer. Something
logos.
Like that. Pretty much that was it. Like you could do those two things. The web came in and it essentially created like a new but infinite canvas, right? That kind of stuff. And now look what's happened with digital, with interactivity, with media moving online, right? All this type of stuff what does it all require? It actually all requires design. It all requires thinking and strategy around user experience, around interaction design, around branding, around visual design. If you want to be in the business of, let's say creating content, video, photo, writing, that's the foundation of everything that's done right now. So the amount of avenues that you have, either as a solopreneur, if you want to start an agency around it or wherever you want to, or start your own brand, it's stunning how many opportunities there are. And I think what's also interesting is now there's these other companies, if you want to get into tech, right? What do they all do? They all compete with each other on experience. So experience isn't accidental. You have to intentionally design it, which is why Google's always hiring designers, Microsoft, Apple, like name a company that's done well, Target, Amazon, right? Like all of them. Name a company that's done well, and they are putting a premium on hiring amazing creative talent to come work with them to build the future.
It's awesome. I love it. And I agree with you on this new canvas. Like it's amazing. I want to switch gears a bit. So I want to go further into Pattern and really how you founded it. So I know there's some unique things you did in inception, especially around culture and just your vision for the company. So give us a flavor of the vision that you had on this, on starting this.
Yeah, it was super interesting because I was coming up on about maybe 7.5 or 8 years at the agency that I was like working at the time. And I had seen firsthand like where e-commerce and design and how something that was, old school e-commerce, very, very transactional. It was just like, it wasn't inspirational at all. It was very technical. And then things started moving toward e-commerce being more of like kind of a front door to the brand in the way that like billboards and 30-second TV ads used to be. And so
Yeah.
e-commerce and digital generally was kind of like becoming more on par with that. And what me and Isaac saw were a lot of brands that were coming up in, like the early 2010s, I'll say. We're going directly with the direct to consumer model, right? So they were skipping the old school methodology of building a brand and, just going right to wholesale and trying to get those big contracts and distribution, stuff like that. And they're like, we're just going to try this out and see if we just sell it directly to people. And so there's a couple of things that were happening there that were interesting, right? Number one, they were doing just really interesting things as brands because they were founded online. They were founded essentially for e-commerce. Yeah. And they were also an entirely new generation that was coming up that sort of is baking in, like doing some social good or environmental good or whatever that mission is, right? Into the DNA of the brand. It wasn't just like some other thing that they added later on. It was core to who they were and core to their value proposition. On the same sort of, or I guess on the flip side of that coin, agency culture, I think generally, if you take, we'll just say the advertising industry, right, as a whole, it's really deteriorated, I think, over the past 15 plus years, where a lot of the creativity is just gone. And I think a lot of those agencies are really just too big to really know what to do. There's some good ones for sure. But, and so a lot of that talent went to small independent agencies. And so we were kind of like thinking, okay, if we could kind of mash those two things up, right, and form a smaller independent agency that really all we care about is designing great things, right, and putting them out there. And we can focus on this new class of brands coming up that are launching direct to consumer and are sort of values and mission oriented, right? And are willing to take risks because they have so much to gain from those risks versus legacy companies that have so much more to lose from those risks. We could really do something awesome. And for us, it was about taking that and combining it with a really intentional design for our own internal culture about who we are, what we stand for, what we want to do and what we want to put out in the world, who we want to work with, and thereby attract the kind of people that align with that culture.
I want to go further into this idea of who you want to work with, because I know you work with a lot of founder-led brands. I mean, a lot of different companies, and we'll get into that. But first, I don't want to assume that when somebody says they work on creative or they want to design great things, I need a little bit more there. So tell us a little bit more specifically about the services that you offer.
Yeah, we have essentially three primary things that we do. So the first one, which is absolutely our bread and butter and the most that we do, is user experience and visual design for e-commerce. Yeah. So that's literally designing e-commerce sites for startups, for brands that are scaling. We have some pretty big clients that we work with where we work with them maybe a little more iteratively. But that's essentially what we started with, because that's what we really, really, really know how to do well. Yeah. Second to that is what we call products and platforms. And mostly what that comes down to is designing apps. Yeah. So that's like apps and maybe more complex experiences like marketplaces are a big thing right now, where it's typically a little more technically complex. There's maybe other interactions beyond conversion that are important to those things, like loyalty and retention and stuff like that. Or in the case of some of the marketplaces, they involve fundraising and building a team to help fundraise for a goal. So that's another big part of it too. And that's kind of an extension of our UX and UI and visual design practices from e-commerce, right? As you're just applying it to, in the case of apps, a much smaller screen, right? Mobile apps, iOS and Android stuff. Or in the case of a marketplace or a fundraising platform, just a lot more complex, user experience problems to think through and different goals that those companies have. And then third is brand identity. And so a lot of companies that we work with and a lot of people who come to us are, more and more they're pre-launch and, maybe they've probably, got a killer idea. They've got, maybe they've got a name. They might even have like an old logo or something like that, but they know they just need to fully level it up. They've come to us usually because they've got investment. Somebody believes in what they're doing. And so they need to invest in their identity and their look and feel and positioning and things like that. And so that's kind of the third piece of it. It's just crafting all in brand identities. A lot of times that goes hand in hand with e-commerce work. We'll do a brand identity project, really lock things in, right? Logo, tagline, application, things like that, and then scale that into a full-fledged, direct to consumer e-commerce experience.
So I know you're heavy in the e-commerce side of things, but any particular just niches in general when it comes to industries that you find get more value out of working with your team than others, or is it agnostic? Like, give us a little bit of that.
It's the obvious ones that come to us, because I think there's a whole range, right? Like the ones that historically have worked really well are like footwear, apparel, beauty, right? Things that are small, easy to ship, right? Yeah. That stuff typically does well online. As people have gotten more comfortable shopping online for essentially anything, right? Now we're doing work for like consumer electronics. We launched a killer outdoor furnishing site where their price point is, significantly more expensive than your typical e-commerce purchase.
Yeah.
And it's a high-end product too. So even within that range, they're on the higher end.
So exciting that different buying experiences. That's exciting. Like to think that we're this far along where somebody would buy like luxury or higher end furniture and things like that online. It's amazing to me. Go ahead. I just get excited.
It is. It's stunning when you think about like the comfort level that people have now. And so, I still think, like, generally speaking, this, food and beverage is something that's been booming online now, because again, if it's non-perishable and you don't have to ship it refrigerated, you can basically ship it anywhere. Yeah. So those kinds of things, the core of our portfolio for a long time has been mostly in like the beauty and apparel and footwear space. But like I mentioned, we've done a lot more like food and beverage and consumer packaged goods. We've got electronics, right? Consumer electronics and tech. And we've launched some other stuff. So around furnishings and stuff like that. Outdoors is starting to boom now. It's actually been booming for a while. So I would say historically it used to be like that, but now you can, if you've got a good idea and a really, really solid vision about how you're going to bring it to life, and you can get it manufactured, pretty much anybody can have a go at it.
So in mentioning that you work with like founder-led brands, maybe funded startups, or even like you said, pre-seed, I mean, just lots of different things. So I don't want this to be an unfair question, because I know every single client's going to be different. There's going to be different campaigns, different needs, different wants. That's apparent. So I don't want this to be an unfair question, but I'd like to get like your thought process on it. So what should some of the brands out there that are in that space that you work in, what should they be thinking about as they go into these different phases, and specifically around creative? Because there's a lot of people that have maybe worked with an agency, it worked, it didn't, or they worked with one and they're like, okay, this is okay, but can we do better? And like what should they be thinking about? Like what kind of questions should they be asking themselves?
That's a really good question. I think from my point of view, there is a continuum of kind of where a company is from when it was founded to, wherever it ends up either scaling, going public, or acquisition, whatever it is. And so we tend, in my earlier career, I would be way on the one end of that spectrum where we're working with like Fortune 500s and publicly traded companies, massive organizations. And now I'm like completely on the other end where most of them are, startups, they're in growth mode, whatever. So what I would say is like, there's a few different, it really depends on where you are, but I would say if you're early on, like the biggest focus should probably be figuring out if people actually like your product and what you can do to make it as best as possible, right? And what I mean by that is that you don't actually need a super fancy site or an agency even necessarily to put something out there and figure out if you actually have a market for it. Market fit. So we've had people come to us, be like, we'd love to work with you. And we're like, we would love to too, but you literally do not need us right now. Like you need to keep doing what you're doing for another year and then come to us when you hit this pivot point. And what that pivot point is that you found product market fit, your cheesy logo and ridiculous packaging is flying off the shelves. And you're pivoting both in your, in a founder mindset, but also your business, right? And your team or whoever's working with you, from selling a product to building a brand. So that's when things start to get interesting, because You have a product, is good. People want it. People like it. They're buying it. You're going to iterate on it, make it better over time. That only gets you so far. Like if you want to go the route of selling that through Amazon and just doing tons of volume, like you can make killer money doing that and run a really successful business. But a lot of founders want more than that. They want to actually build value in the brand that they've created. That's where we come in. So that means asking questions like, where do we want to go in 5 years? How did we even get started? And how do we stay true to that while scaling up into new product lines, new markets, things like that? What is our product mix going to even look like in a few years? Who are we even talking to? A lot of founders don't even know who their consumers are because and I don't mean that as a diss or a knock on them, but they're so locked in to growing and pushing and just grinding it out and scaling that it's just like, we might need to like stop and actually think about who this is even for, right? And how do we actually speak to them in an elevated way, in an authentic way that goes beyond just a connection to I like the product to I love what you stand for, right? Those are the things that I would say are the important things to think about. And then, you've got to go through the process of finding experts in like us, e-commerce, design, branding, things like that. A lot of people who are, out there, they're really good at like growth marketing and stuff like that, or PR, and really, really talking with them about like, how do they operate? What do they believe? One of the reasons why we are lucky and get to work with a lot of founder brands is because we essentially run pattern just like they would run their business. In terms of the culture and in terms of, leading with that kind of vision. And so I would encourage them to look for people like that, like-minded people to work with.
So I don't want this to come across as negative, but I think it's easy to look at things when you tee it up like that, right? Everybody's like, "Oh, he's going to be negative." No, I'm not. Just listen. So, and I don't want this to. We're not calling anybody out again, so we don't need any names there. But I think it's easy to focus on the good, and when something works, I tend to go on the other side, and I'm like, when you see something that you're just like, this is off, and I don't mean any specific one brand or anything like that, but what are some of the things that people can self-identify with if they listen to this and say, "Oh, that's us," that are when something's not working right, other than just sales, because that's an obvious, right? Like that's pretty straightforward. But like on the creative side and on what you do, like what are some of the things that stick out that you have that first client meeting and you're like, "Oh, this, and this, we definitely need to work on this." Like, what are some of those themes?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes cultural fit, at least when we're working with other clients, is super important. And you can think that you've got it and then realize that you don't. And it's not that you necessarily won't have it, but you'll realize, oh, there's actually more to it. Maybe we need to dig into why they're so apprehensive about our ideas. Maybe they got burned by another agency. That's actually frequently the case. They've gotten burned by another agency. And so they're super apprehensive about even working with another agency, let alone trusting one. So there's a process of building trust that sometimes can be really natural and easy. And sometimes it takes a month or two to really, really lock in that trust. Sometimes what I say a lot is that when we work with these brands, a lot of what we're doing is actually trying to get what is in the founder's head out and visualize it through design. We don't always get that right. Nobody always gets that right. And so sometimes we miss. And then sometimes you have to think about what did we miss when they said a certain thing? What did we interpret differently that they're, that they're just not feeling, right? And go back to the drawing board and maybe go back to the beginning or partway through our discovery process. Sometimes what we need to do is just take 2, 3, sometimes 4 steps back and really think about what did we miss? How did we miss it? Like, is it a team dynamics issue? Is it me? Like, am I not, directing and guiding the team the right way and so that they can hit a home run with their work? Did we miss something strategically? Like, was there something that we thought was maybe not that important that actually they thought was super important? On the flip side, are they just way too close to it? Sometimes part of our process is like getting them to think bigger than just the next sort of super tactical thing, which is honestly how they have to run, especially if they're like a bootstrap startup or a bootstrap brand. You've got to be really tactical, right? But for us, it's like we want to help them take a higher level look of what do you want to represent in the world, right? Like, and that's hard work for a lot of founders, especially if they're grinding it out in the details day to day. So I think a lot of those things can happen. What we try to do is like, if it's going to happen, let's try to have it happen early.
Yeah.
So we can pivot, we can reset, we can rebuild trust, we can regain momentum. And then once we're really into the design phases and we're going through design cycles and we're working on stuff, like everyone's just feeling really good about it because the foundation is super solid.
So speaking of winning, I mean, you guys are on fire in terms of the accolades that the industry's recognizing you for. So you won a Shopify award, nominated for a Webby. I mean, come on, man, on fire. So tell me more about this, like this experience and what it takes, because it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's been super good for us this year. We started the year off with the Webby nomination, which last year we had gotten some honorees, which is great. Still, like just being an honoree and a runner-up at the Webbies is huge for our first like year or two in business. This past year we got our first actual nomination, and we were up against like serious heavy hitter. Like we were up against Google, I think, in our category for I'm like,
who's that? Who's that?
Win that on votes, but we'll try. But just being in the same category as some of these world-class agencies and world-class brands has been killer. And then being an e-commerce focused digital agency, when we found out that we won the Shopify Commerce Award, which is like we pretty much only work on Shopify Plus really as the e-commerce platform. I mean, we've designed on all of them, but our main focus is Shopify. Like we've gone pretty much all in on that. So when we found out that we won that, I mean, we were just completely floored because there's over 3,000 entries. There were 9 categories and there was only one winner in each category. So we won best mobile store experience, which is like absolutely insane for us to fathom that we would win that, 3 years into doing what we're doing.
That's amazing. So obviously you guys are on fire, adding clients, winning awards. I mean, I have to ask, so what's next? I mean, what's next for you? What's next for Pattern?
Yeah, I mean, this year, I kind of mentioned this early on, but this year was when we really started to put those 3 stakes in the ground around just those 3 buckets of like what we really do, right? We had a lot of people asking us like, do we do marketing? Do we do SEO? Do we do SEM? Do we do those ad campaigns, stuff like that? And we're like, you know what? We really just want to focus on what we're doing well. So heading into next year, we're really doubling down on that, right? E-commerce, apps, branding. That's really it. And we want to focus everything we've got on that and grow the team around that expertise. I think probably the most interesting thing that's happened to us since the beginning of this year is that our focus on not exclusively, but definitely a strong focus on working with, either startups or brands that are, in growth mode that are founder led, is that it led us to working with a whole bunch of celebrities.
Wow.
Because it's easier than ever to launch a brand. And that's true also for people who are, influencers in their industry or just, big celebrities that are interested in getting into a market. And so, over the last couple of years, we launched with some insanely popular, beauty influencers that launched their own lines, Jaclyn Hill and Jeffree Star and things like that. And we worked with them, and it was awesome. And from that, just this year, we launched just recently Jonathan Van Ness from Queer Eye. We launched his brand online. It's called JVN Hair, and it's a clean beauty hair care brand. So we got to work with his team. And then we also, just last week, were finally allowed to actually say that we designed most of the branding and the entire e-commerce experience for Ariana Grande's new REM Beauty, which is her new
Come on, man. This is amazing.
Yeah, so that was just like, I mean,
now I know. Hold on, now I know why it took me so long to get you on this interview. I'm over here like, come on, Michael, what are you talking about, man? Like you're holding me. I know you're busy. You're holding me off, but there better be a good reason. Okay, she's a good reason. You're forgiven.
That's the reason. Yeah, no, that's the reason. I mean, like literally, that's it. No blame or anything.
Come on, put off mission matters for Ariana Grande. Come on, man.
Oh yeah. So, but I mean, it was just crazy how it transpired. Like we I think the interesting thing about all of it, and there's actually more coming. I mean, we're working with a few more right now that are, celebrity founded, that we can, reveal those when we can. But it's worked really well from us because there is a certain way and there's a certain approach that we take with founders, because we are founders and we just have a deep respect for anybody who's doing it. But it's allowed us to be able to craft our process around what a founder needs to kind of go through in order to gain the trust and then also open them up to what could be, right? We're essentially designing the future of what they're doing. Well, that works awesome for founders, no matter whether that founder is just somebody down the street or whether it's, Ariana Grande or Jonathan Van Ness. They're still founders. So some of these people are like ridiculously famous, and it's a little intimidating. Did some work with Metallica last year too. And I mean, when you're presenting to the founder, you're presenting to Metallica, you present it to Ariana Grande. Like it can be super intimidating, but when you take away all of this, everything else, and you realize that they care about their vision and they want to work with people who get it. Like, I think that's why it ends up working well for us and for them. You can put all that stuff I'm a huge Metallica fan. So I was like, look, I'm going to put that to the side for a minute and we're going to talk about what we're doing here. And so it's just, it's been a wild, I would have never guessed you asked me this, even at the beginning of this year. What would have happened? I would have been like, dude, you're nuts. Like, no way.
Man, this is exciting, and I'm happy to bring the story to my audience. And speaking of the audience, if somebody is watching this and they want to learn more and connect with you and your team at Pattern, I mean, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, best way for sure will be the website. It's thisispattern.com. And then you just search for that on Instagram, on Twitter, and on LinkedIn. We're probably most active on LinkedIn. Just search for This Is Pattern. You'll see it. It's like a almost black and a neon green. Can't miss it. That's for sure the best way to hook up with us. Or just drop us a line on the website, get on our email list, or if you got an idea, you want to talk about how we might be able to help, shoot us a note. We love talking with people.
Awesome. Well, Michael, really been a pleasure having you on the show and learning more about Pattern, the founding, the culture, all the big projects you're doing and working on, and really how you're providing value, not only to your founders, but to the customers, the community around you. I mean, it's an awesome story. And definitely for everybody tuning in, if this is your first time tuning in, number one, definitely go check out Pattern. So we'll have all that in the show notes, the websites, all the other good stuff. So really easy to follow up there. But number two, we at Mission Matters, our whole goal here and our whole aim is really to amplify stories for entrepreneurs, experts, really just people that have a story to tell, that are giving back in their own way and really providing value to the business community and community in general. So definitely always looking for mission-based entrepreneurs out there to showcase. So definitely hit that subscribe button. If you're, again, your first time, we have many more mission-based individuals coming up and we don't want you to miss any of that. And seriously, Michael, been a pleasure having you on. I'm excited to watch you keep on racking up awards, racking up campaigns, and just getting it done. So, man, really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Awesome, man. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.